Welcome to the Art of We podcast.
Hello.
Hello, Krista.
Hello, my love. What are we
Today
talking about today?
we're gonna break down the role of alcohol in our relationship.
Ooh, that's a juicy one.
I wonder if anyone out there listening has had thoughts or conversations about alcohol in their relationship. We're a little late to the party to watch A Star Is Born, but we watched it recently and it was quite impactful.
Why is that coming up now for you? Because he was such a big alcoholic.
Yeah.
What did that evoke in you or provoke in you in relationship to the conversation about alcohol and relationship?
Well,
Oh, by the way, if you haven't seen the movie, it's about a couple. It's a really great movie. It's about a couple, and the male in the couple, in this case it was a female male couple, was drinking a lot in the beginning and basically kept drinking throughout their marriage, and it became really impactful on their marriage ultimately.
Well, I think watching the scenes where this guy is, completely and totally obliterated, at a gathering or in a one-on-one hangout with his wife, the Technicolor kind of very intense portrayal of that is not something I relate to on that level.
Well, except for that one time in Mexico.
That's right. Oh my God, that was crazy.
We were at a dinner.
Well, I had a margarita on the beach and then we went to dinner, and I didn't realize how strong the margarita was until I was drinking wine at dinner, and all of a sudden I was in big trouble. So
It was so interesting because it was like all of a sudden you were gone. And we were talking to this person who,
oh
it
man.
was more of a business conversation.
Yeah.
And I didn't connect with him that much. So it was kind of like hoping that the two of you would really connect around business, and then all of a sudden you're kind of gone. I'm like, uh-oh.
You had to take over.
You
Yeah.
poor thing. You kind of like had your
Oh man. Deer in the headlights.
Deer in the headlights. Yeah. Anyway. Okay. So
Not my best moment for sure. But anyhow, luckily that's an outlier in our
oh my gosh, I'm so grateful. I'm
yeah.
so grateful that that's an outlier for us because
Yeah.
holy cow, that would be hard to be in a partnership where that was a common thing. That would be really hard. And I know people who are in that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what you and I, to put that in perspective, we have had an on again, off again kind of relationship with alcohol in our partnership, and there have been times, I think probably the most common pattern has been like a drink or two on Friday and Saturday, and then having an agreement of not drinking during the week, which mostly feels fine. But then there are these periods where there's more stress at work or something's going on, and I notice myself, deciding that, okay, well, it's Monday, but I had a hard day, or
Well, yeah. I mean,
something like that,
but it's not like you need to twist my arm to join you.
Yeah,
So
that's
it's not
true.
like I don't want you to be taking the responsibility for that. I think that we get into these, like you said, these moments of life that things feel a little bit heavier, a little bit denser, and we're like, we just want a little bit lighter feeling for
Yeah.
a moment.
Yeah, and that's the promise of a cocktail or a glass of wine or something like that. And
For like 10 minutes.
yeah, for 10 minutes. And then there's poor sleep, and there's, not feeling as crisp in the morning,
Right.
and maybe some more irritability.
Yeah. I can get irritable for sure.
Mhm. For me, it's like more anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
So we've had these periods where we're swear it off, and we're in that right now. How
Well,
far in are we now?
with the exception of special occasions. I
Oh,
mean,
right.
we're about 3 days in.
3 days.
I'm just kidding.
I
I
think
don't
it's 3
know. 3
weeks.
weeks. Yeah.
Yeah,
3
3
weeks.
weeks. Yeah. And when did we set we're going to go for another like 5
To the
weeks or
beginning
6
of
weeks?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we
Yeah.
do have special occasions where we'll be like, okay, there is this, like we went to a gala the other week or whatever, and like, hey, let's enjoy the wine.
Yeah.
And then we were very happy to get back on the bandwagon, the dry wagon, right after that. So
yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting phenomenon. looking at the role of alcohol in health and relationships. And I
Hmm.
think for me, the crux of it is that 10 minutes of taking the edge off is really nice. But then I think there's also this, I'm curious if you would agree with this, actually, that do you experience a decrease in my presence after a drink or two with you? Like, is that something, even if it's like a 5 or 10%, subtle decrease, what do you experience there?
I think I would say after 2 drinks, there's definitely a decrease in your presence and more of a feeling like I'm a little bit more alone.
Hmm.
You seem a little bit more in your own thoughts. You seem a little bit less with me. With 1 drink, I don't really notice that very much.
That's good to know. I guess I never asked you that before.
What about with me? How do you experience me?
I hadn't really put a lot of thought into it, but I think I do feel a similar kind of drop off after more
Mm,
than one drink.
mm.
It's very subtle. I mean, it's not something that I would even say is like a problem necessarily. It's just that there's definitely less curiosity that you express toward me after a couple drinks. Yeah.
Well, it makes sense. I think that, when we're in the periods of drinking and it's becoming a habit, I think we are trying to escape something a little bit or change our state just a little bit. Or it's a ritual thing like, hey, let's go out on our deck and have a cocktail and,
Hmm.
but it does keep us being a little bit less present with each other.
One thing that's become popular is these um non-alcoholic spirits, if you will. So we've been experimenting with different things, and there's a gin alternative that we bought that I kind of like, that is zero alcohol, and it's like you were saying, the ritual of making a mocktail is something that somehow makes that transition from drinking a cocktail after work to not drinking a cocktail after work much easier for me for some reason. I remember talking to people in the past who had trouble quitting tobacco, and this kind of ritual of having something to do with your hands, or chewing Nicorette gum, or these different things that people
Yeah.
do. And I think there is something to that, of like a transitional period of something that occupies you. But what I've really been enjoying with you is making a mocktail and going out on the deck, as you said, and doing our 15 minutes each of generous listening, which is on another episode. We don't need to go into the details, but there's something different about choosing, rather than drinking a cocktail and then just, I don't know, talking stream of consciousness about like what happened in my day, versus like making a mocktail and with full presence going into this experience together of really listening and connecting with each other.
I love this conversation because you're giving me a little bit more insight to the transitions. I think that for like the after work cocktail, it served as a transition, but less conscious transition for us. And this mocktail plus this game changing connection exercise that we do, and you can find that in episode 93. I will put it in the show notes as well. It's a way that we take 35 minutes or less and really go into deep connection with each other. And it seems like when we pair those two together, this kind of like something that we're putting in our bodies, this drinking, this non-alcoholic drink, plus a different environment, which is out on the deck, plus a deep connection exercise, it seems to me that we come out of that in the same kind of state that we're trying to get through the alcohol, but without the alcohol. And we're coming out of it more connected, more regulated, in a very different state than at the end of the workday.
Yes. Yeah, when we talked about making this commitment of whatever it was, like 9 weeks or whatever it was in the beginning, we talked about, well, like what are we going to do to have that, to replace that shift in the state that the alcohol offers us. And I'm just really digging how we're doing that right now. It's really working well for from my perspective of
Yeah.
achieving that shift in state, but doing it in a more connected, more present way.
Yeah, I love that. And I will share with our listeners that we haven't, you've taken some more alcohol breaks, like deliberate alcohol breaks than I have. And it hasn't always been like we're doing this together, but often it is. We're doing it together, but not all the time. But I do really like doing it together because it creates a little bit more of a robust interpersonal habit versus just like a personal habit. And
Yeah.
there's something that feels really good about doing it together
It's
that I
much
love.
easier to have a buddy system when you're making I mean, same thing with any change, like going to the gym or whatever
Right.
the habit formation is.
So why don't we take a quick break and we come back? For those of you who are listening and you don't really talk about it in your partnership, we're going to give some, I don't know, maybe some different angles that you can bring up alcohol in your partnership, especially if it's impacting your relationship in some form.
That sounds great.
Okay, we'll be right back. We hope you're enjoying this episode. I want to take a quick break to let you know about a gift we created for you and your partner. We compiled our top 10 relationship agreements, agreements that have been so powerful in supporting the success of our partnership that we even turned them into our wedding vows. These agreements help us stay connected, growing, and thriving as a couple, and they've been critical to help us create a kind of we that's way beyond what we've ever experienced before. You can download this free gift at KristaVanderveer.com. That's KristaVanderveer.com. Also, if you enjoy our podcast, it would be so meaningful to us if you left us a rating and review. Not only does it help others find us, but it gives us critical feedback on how we're doing. Thanks in advance, and now back to the episode. Welcome back. Before we go into how to talk to your partner about alcohol, I want to share that one of the reasons that this is coming up for us again is because of the recent studies that have come out about alcohol and the brain and the body. And, I think for a long time there's been speculation and research pointing that alcohol is not good for us. But we recently ran into some new studies about that, right, Will?
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything you want to share that feels like a little bit of a new information for you?
Well, I think it came back on my radar when Andrew Huberman did a episode about a year ago on alcohol. It was just pretty great episode. If anybody out there wants to go hear, an update on the research, that was a year ago. But there's been a couple of more recent studies that have confirmed the view that even a little bit of alcohol appears to be associated with higher rates of cancer.
Mm.
And it's interesting how medicine evolves. I mean, you see these photographs of doctors in their white coats in the hospital smoking cigarettes in the patient's room, with the patient. They're all smoking cigarettes. And then when I was coming up through medical training, it was like, the resveratrol and the red wine is good for your heart. You should have a glass or two of red wine every night.
Right.
And so I think that our culture has a very interesting relationship with alcohol.
Totally.
Um, this morning I was recording a talk for our psychedelic students, teaching about psilocybin and MDMA and ketamine, and I presented this wonderful graph from this study in 2010 that shows the relative dangers to the individuals who consume the drug and also to other people of basically all the drugs under the sun. And alcohol is the most damaging drug in the world. And part of the reason why it's damaging is because it's so widespread. I mean, it's way more widespread alcohol use than, say, heroin or crack. But the impact of alcohol is pretty severe, not just on your own body and, personal health, but on society. You think about drunk driving, right? And all the different things, domestic violence and suicides and all the things that are associated with alcohol. So anyway, there's all of that to consider as well.
Right. And then there's also the fact that as women age, I think that I don't know that it's actually alcohol is worse for us, but most women have a harder time with alcohol as they age. is probably as damaging. And then it messes with our hormones and it messes with our brain function. And even though it's probably similar with men, I know that women can have the same kind of impacts at less amount of alcohol than men.
Definitely less, yeah, impact on the microbiome and the gut, so many different things.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think just us being a little bit more conscious, like really turning towards, okay, like, is this really like, are we in denial about
Yeah,
how hard this is on our bodies and our systems and our brains and our health and our futures? So part of that is in there too for us, is just really turning towards that, the really looking at it versus just kind of turning a blind eye to it.
and at the same time taking a not a black and white position on it. We, as you said earlier on the show, like we made this commitment to take this break, but we are also, acknowledging that there are going to be special occasions. We have important birthdays in October to celebrate, and all kinds of things going on. So, yeah, we're just trying to navigate a middle road here.
Are you talking about Biggie Smalls' birthday? Our almost 4-year-old Shorky?
He does have a birthday coming up.
He
Is
does
that
in
a drinking
October.
night for us?
It's October 14th, so we should look at the calendar and see if that's a drinking night.
Okay.
I'm just kidding. Okay, so let's say that someone's listening and they are not really being in an explicit conversation with their partner who tends to have a cocktail or two at nighttime, and the other partner is starting to notice the relational impacts or maybe even the mental health impacts, and they haven't approached the conversation because they know that it's a sensitive topic for their partner. Let's say you're the one that's drinking and I'm the one who's approaching you about it. What would be a way that would feel good to you for me to approach that conversation with you without it feeling like I'm shaming you or making you wrong or telling you that you need to be different?
That's a great question. It's probably pretty hard to do that. I think that it's a different situation if both people drink alcohol than if only one person does. I think it's a little bit harder if the person bringing the concerns is not a drinker, because the drinker's going to think that this person has certain preconceived ideas about what goes on in the experience of a drinker without maybe not personally knowing what that feels like. So there might be a setup there, but let's just say both people consume alcohol, but one person has a heavier habit that's more impactful.
Perfect.
Okay. So I think in a situation like that, it's a question of like, hey, can we have a conversation about alcohol? Can we talk about the pros and cons? And I'd really like to know more about how it feels, what you like about that. And I wonder if you would also be open to me sharing some of the impacts over here of
Mm-hmm.
when you tie one on that's a little too heavy for me. What that feels like for me.
What if I said to you, I want to talk to you about a topic that could potentially be sensitive? Are you open to that?
I'm laughing because you do that a lot. I like it when you approach me that way. Yeah, that feels
Okay.
good.
And then I said, I know that we both enjoy alcohol and it's something that can be really fun for us at times and tend to do this less, but it seems like you've gotten to a little bit more of a habit of drinking it more often than I do. And I just really want to check in to understand what is driving that, because I have a concern that you might be trying to change your state or not address something that's really important for us to address, but instead using alcohol as a way to escape that. And I just want to check in about that. And then the next thing might be, are you open to hearing how it impacts me when you have a drink or two at nighttime?
Yeah, I think that's a great way to approach it. It causes me to wonder: is this my best coping strategy for dealing with work stress and wanting to really shift gears into a different state when I transition into home?
Mm-hmm.
Are there other ways to achieve that? I think I respond really well to you sharing the impacts on you,
Mm-hmm.
because I really care about my impact on you.
Mm-hmm. Right. I know that I tend to change my ways more when I understand that there's a negative impact on the people around me.
Yeah.
I love that. So if I were to say something to you like, I notice that after checking with you, of course, to see if you're open to hearing the impacts, I notice that I withdraw more when you're drinking, and I'm less likely to come closer to you and want to connect with you because you feel less present or you disinterested in my world or something like that. That would be something that would be okay to say to you.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I don't feel defensive at all when you say that. I could. I mean, maybe I would have in the beginning of our relationship, but I don't feel that now.
Yeah. Good. So those are some ideas. And then what if it's a partnership where we kind of are both getting into some bad habits, and let's say I'm noticing the bad habits, you're just kind of going along, you love it. I know you love it. I'm just making this up. I'm just making it up. You know you love it. And I'm like, shoot, do we really want to be doing this? I think that is an easier conversation because I'm joining in with you in
Hmm.
this scenario. And it's kind of like, hey, can we really take a conscious look at how we're using alcohol and see if it's what we actually want to be choosing?
Yeah.
And let's talk about the impacts and the benefits and the drawbacks and just see if this fits our lifestyle right now.
Yeah, I think that's easier. I think it's harder when we have a more polarized situation where maybe I'm drinking in a way that's very unhealthy and you're concerned about me, right? That I'm going to have a serious health outcome or,
Right.
drink and drive or do something really destructive or dangerous. So,
For sure. Or you're snoring and keeping me up at night now more, and it's really intense, and I don't want to sleep
yeah,
in the same bed as you
right.
anymore. Yeah. I mean, that's a whole nother angle, is like the impact that the alcohol has on our bodies. I'm pretty sure that you told me that I snore more sometimes if I have like a couple glasses of wine.
Yeah, I like your snoring. It's so cute.
Ah, love it. Okay. So, and then I think the other thing is like if I was using alcohol more often, and I'm already in a little bit of shame about it because I'm realizing it's kind of a crutch.
Uh huh.
I would have to look really closely, like, am I willing to change this? And am I willing to look at the impact that I think it's having on our partnership or on you specifically? And I think that also takes a lot of courage of being like, oh, hey, well, I noticed that I've been really getting into the habit of drinking more alcohol, and I don't love that it's becoming a habit. And I notice that I feel more irritable the next morning and maybe even a couple of hours after having a drink. And I'm imagining it has an impact on you also and our partnership. And I just really want to explore that with you. Would you be open to that?
I'm very open to that. Let me put it that way. And taking a lot of responsibility. I think there's also a difficult conversation that can happen where your partner who's drinking too much clearly does have a problem and maybe can't see it,
Ooh.
and you've tried a number of times, and the person's still showing signs of alcohol dependency and abuse, and
And they might
eh,
be in serious denial about it and even lying. I mean, I actually know
sure,
a couple that is navigating that, and that's
sure.
so hard. Yeah.
So this is a little bit of like um, dealing with an addict 101 here, but I do think it's worth mentioning that sometimes it's the most beautiful and helpful thing you can do is to say, like, you got to choose this relationship or alcohol. It's either me or alcohol.
Mm.
And sometimes people choose alcohol when you present them with that choice, but sometimes they don't.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be a massive game changer for them. So
Mm-hmm.
anyway, those are really, really difficult places to come to, but sometimes ultimatums like that can be really, really life-saving for people.
Right. It can be what the person needs to hear
Right.
in order to make change.
Yeah. Now, you don't want to make a habit of ultimatums as a way of dealing with things, but
No. You're talking about if you've done everything that you can do,
yeah,
you've tried to have the conversations,
yeah,
nothing is
exactly,
changing, you're at
exactly.
your end's wit, you're at the
Your
you're at
wits
the end
end.
of your road. Sometimes I get things like words mixed up in my brain.
I love that.
Maybe it's the impact from all the alcohol I've
Maybe it
drank
is.
over the
Yeah, your
years.
brain damaged. Yeah. So, anything else you want to share about this moment in our relationship with alcohol?
I think I just want to invite, like, these heavy conversations don't actually also need to be heavy. Like if you can create an environment inside of your partnership in general where the bigger and harder conversations don't have to be serious and loaded, and they can be a little bit like, hey honey, like I think we need to check out our unconscious habits about alcohol. Are you open to that? Like
Yeah.
maybe there's ways that you can bring it into your partnership that's a little bit lighter. And if not, then, you got to do the sit down conversation. But one thing that we really stand for that I'll just close with is that I think that explicit conversations inside a partnership is so, so critical to the success of your relationship. If you really care about your relationship, have the explicit conversations and don't steer away from them. Don't let them go into the shadows. If you don't give your relationship the opportunity to show you what it has by bringing the hard conversations, if you don't do that, you're going to not know where you can go with your partnership, and you're likely going to have an unsatisfying partnership in the end.
And you might be eroding the foundation of your partnership as well, and shortening the lifespan of your partnership by avoiding difficult conversations, for sure.
Totally. Absolutely. And if there's anything else you want to hear about alcohol or share about your experience with your partner, we would so love to hear from you. And if you're appreciating our content, we would so love for you to leave a rating and review on your favorite podcast platform. I can't tell you how meaningful it is to us. And it also helps other people find this content as well. We need to create as many healthy, thriving we's on this planet as possible. And this is one way that we feel like we can support people in doing that. Thanks for joining us, and we'll talk with you next week.
Thank you.